Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fourmation Podcast. This is number 24, so we're motoring towards the 30 mark, and we're enjoying doing them. We know that we now have kind of a route out of lockdown, but there's still 4 months to go until normality resumes, so you can expect us to continue as we go through the next few months, as long as we can, really. And we spoke on last week's show briefly about how we're kind of at our year anniversary since we started, and we've come a long way since then. We started on radio, we've transitioned into a podcast, which is obviously spread across YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all the good streaming platforms. And we've, in the last week or so, we touched on it briefly last week, but we've made another venture, and that is onto TikTok, which we didn't really see coming. I'm sure if you'd mentioned TikTok when we started last year, it would have been much less popular than it is now. But there we go, we're on TikTok, and if you're on TikTok, we would love you to engage with it. Mr. Harry Tizard is the brains behind this idea. He was the man who's started it off. So Harry, what can you tell us? Where do you find the formation, and what sort of stuff can we expect on the page?
It's the simple one. It's at the _formation. Sort of everywhere is at the _formation, but TikTok is no different. You can find almost everything. We try and do one, maybe two, maybe three every single day. It might be a podcast clip. It might be exclusive content. So maybe it will be, one of us previewing a game that you won't see on the podcast we do, because we do this once a week. So head over there. It's just a minute long each time, and I think it's pretty decent. I like doing it. So head over.
I find it weird when normally just scrolling through at night, as you do, because it's addictive. I don't care what anybody says, whether you like it or not, because I was one of them that hated it at first, and then you get more addicted to it. And just seeing one of our four beautiful faces pop up at night is very scary, but it is strange. But it's good, and credit to Harry, because he's put in a lot of hard work for it.
Yeah, so as I said, Harry has given you the tagline there, or the @ so get over there if you're on there and give us a follow. I just want to mention before we move on, we maybe don't give this enough attention on each show, but Sam Allen is a big Grimsby Town fan. I just want to mention this. At the time of recording, it's the day after Grimsby have got their first win of 2021 on the board. Sam, how good are you feeling this morning? Are you feeling a bit more optimistic that you could survive this year in League Two?
Yes, George. It feels like a huge weight off my shoulders, I have to say. And it's mental that we've actually done a double over a team this season, considering how the form that we've been in and the way we've been playing. But, we desperately needed a win to get Paul Hurst's second reign as our manager underway. And we've done that, obviously. Barrow won late last night as well, which means we're still in the relegation zone at the moment. But that makes the win last night even more important, so that we keep in touching distance of them. And yeah, it's crazy what one win can do for your confidence. I do feel like hopefully we can push on now. Yeah,
well, fingers crossed you can, and keep yourselves in the Football League. But we will move on now. We've got a few talking points on this week's show, as always. And we want to start in the Premier League, as we normally seem to do. And there's probably been a bit of attention on social media this week. We all know that Manchester City are running away with it at the top of the league, which means the title race is all but over, which is maybe a shame, because a lot of people thought this could be a year when it's anyone's game. Oh, well. But at the bottom of the table, the battle looks set to continue into the final weeks of the season. Of the current bottom three, you'd have to say Sheffield United and West Brom look pretty doomed. And I don't know if you can see, but Devon is grinning through his camera right now at the thought of that. But one team who currently sit in 18th place, who have given themselves a fighting chance, are Fulham, who of course went down 2 seasons ago without a fight, really, but you'd have to say they've given themselves a fighting chance this time. They've only lost 1 of their last 7 league games. And as a result, they sit just 3 points behind Newcastle United and 4 points behind Brighton. And we've got 13 rounds of matches to go. So my question to you, Sam, do you think Fulham have got what it takes to continue their good run and eventually survive?
Yes, funny. Fulham is a funny one, to be fair. Probably a couple of weeks ago, I would have said no, but 7 points from their last 3 games. They've managed to get over that sort of problem that they've had this season, turning draws into wins. And they look great. They've only lost one of the last 7 matches in the Premier League. So Scott Parker has really turned things around, in the likes of Ademola Lookman and players like that. He's been a brilliant signing for them, 4 goals, 3 assists. And they've really seemed to have turned things around. In Newcastle, with the injury of Callum Wilson, obviously we'll get more onto that later, but they're sort of going in the opposite direction. So it looks only 3 points between them now. So it looks to be a close fight.
Yeah, and you mentioned there the turning draws into wins. That win that Fulham got over Sheffield United last weekend was only their 4th one in the league this season. And they had the Everton one like only a week before that. So would you say that is encouraging that they've started to show that? But would you also be slightly not concerned as such, but the fact they've only got 4, are they going to be able to produce another 4? Do you think they will believe in themselves to do that?
They should have belief in themselves, the form they're in, and I think it's just been a mental block really of going the extra mile in these games, and they know that they have to at this point, the situation that they're in, a relegation battle. So I think with the recent results that they've had, they play good football for a team down there, and they've got great players. Like I mentioned, Lookman especially has impressed me. So I think it seems they are starting to get over that idea that they can actually push against all teams in this league.
Yeah, and as for Newcastle, they've won 2 of their last 14. And you'd have to say that the pressure has maybe been mounting on Steve Bruce throughout the season. I don't think he's ever been popular, and we've mentioned this only a few weeks ago. But do you think, had there been crowds in the stadium every week, would the Newcastle fans have been accepting this, Devon? Do you think he'd still be in the job if, St James's Park had been full every week this season?
Definitely not, because we know what Newcastle fans are like. They turn up in the numbers. They're very well supported, and we've seen in the past where they've made their voices vocal, especially towards Mike Ashley. Has it worked? Nope, he's still there. Unbelievable that he's still there, but I think they'd have really stamped their authority on this issue. And I think, like we said a couple of weeks ago, Bruce is very lucky to be playing his side playing in an empty stadium, because the negativity towards him, Steve Agnew, and the rest of the clown bunch would be sorry, just a bit of Wednesday influence coming in there, especially when we talk about Pulis later. I think out of everyone down that bottom chunk, there's only Newcastle that I can see going down without a whimper, because Fulham are aggressive. They play really good football, as Sam said, and obviously their Achilles heels have been the draws. But the only good thing for Newcastle is that Fulham face Tottenham, Liverpool, and Man City consecutively after playing Palace, which in that time they've pretty much got 4 games to try and spark a little bit of form going into that final run of fixtures.
Yeah, you mentioned it there. It's almost like you're reading off my list of notes here. Newcastle's next 4 is Wolves, West Brom, Aston Villa, and then Brighton. So, Harry, how crucial could the next few weeks be, and how many points would you expect them to get from those 4 games? Do you think they will pick up a couple of wins, or do you not see them stopping the rot?
It'll be the absolute difference maker in the season, because Fulham have been fantastic, and they're like Sam said, unbeaten in their last 7. But the problem is that the teams they're coming off against really, really tough sides, and I wouldn't expect Fulham to pick almost any points. Whereas Newcastle, they've got to change it around somewhere, but they're not showing any signs of doing so. That's the issue. Yes, they got the 2 wins. They're against Everton and Southampton. So 2 teams, Everton are doing well, Saints not so much, sadly. But to answer your question, I can't see them getting many points whatsoever. If there was a sign of encouragement, I would probably say, do you know what? Yes, I can see that going. I can see them getting a point there because of this. But for me, I can't see it.
A player the Geordies have relied upon immensely this year, and Sam's already mentioned him, is Callum Wilson, who they signed last summer. He scored 10 goals and registered 5 assists, all of those in the league. Would you say that it's dangerous, Sam, that they're so reliant on one player? And how much would you worry for them for these next few games if he doesn't get himself back to full fitness?
Yeah, it is incredibly dangerous. It's obviously good when he's fit and firing, but at the moment he isn't. And the mental thing is that Alan St. Maximin, who's only started 11 games this season, is actually second at Newcastle in terms of goal involvements, which shows they really, really lack inspiration going forward. They've got players like Miguel Almiron, who's a tricky player. He works hard, but I haven't seen enough end product from him so far. And obviously they got Alan St. Maximin back fit now after he's had a difficult season with obviously COVID and injuries and things like that. So that'll be a small positive for them. But with their main man Callum Wilson out, it does look very difficult for them, even with the favourable run that they've got coming up, like you mentioned.
It's not just that though. I think it's goals across the board. I mean, you mentioned Lookman with it. Did you say 4 goals? But Callum Wilson's goal involvement, so 15, is he scored. Obviously, he's been involved in Newcastle, 15 of Newcastle's goals, and they've only scored 26 overall. Fulham have only scored 21 overall as well. So it's whether Fulham can just find that extra goal scorer, maybe some more from midfield or coming in, or maybe even Lookman going on a bit of a run now.
Yeah, we've kind of focused on 2 teams there, Fulham and Newcastle, as if it's maybe a straight fight between them, but you could also argue there are other teams involved in this. The next team, which is closest to the bottom 3, is Brighton and Hove Albion, as I briefly mentioned earlier. They're on 26 points. On Monday night, they suffered a pretty painful defeat to Crystal Palace. I think the big fans of XG couldn't quite believe it, because I think Brighton were well ahead on expected goals on Monday night. I think Palace had two touches in the opposition box or something stupid like that and managed to win 2-1. But yeah, Brighton are maybe still involved. Harry, we've seen, obviously statistically, Brighton have looked good going forward. They have a lot of shots, but they don't tend to score. So would you worry for them, or do you think this is really a straight fight between 2 teams?
Look, this is the Premier League. Anything can happen. Anyone can get sucked into the relegation battle. And Brighton had it last year. They were, I wouldn't say flying high, but they were doing quite well. And all of a sudden they were playing well, but they weren't getting the points to show for it. But for me, I don't think they'll be in too much danger, just because out of them, out of Newcastle, out of Fulham, they're showing the most encouraging signs. Well, Fulham recently have done a lot better, but out of them and Newcastle, let's say, they're showing so many more signs. They've got better squad depth. They've got a better quality manager. They play a better style of football. And I think out of all of those, they're the most likely to pick up points against the big sides, or quite big sides. Next up, they got West Brom, a team that have struggled to score. And to be honest, even under Allardyce have struggled to keep them out. I know they kept a clean sheet against Burnley, but that's one in however many. They've also got Leicester up next after that difficult fixture, and then they got Southampton and Newcastle. So, like Newcastle themselves, they've got a decent fixture on to go up and pick up points, and this is their time. As for Newcastle, to separate themselves between them and Fulham.
Yeah, Brighton have had a similar problem really to Fulham. I mean, they play really good stuff. I mean, they had 25, 26 shots against Palace and still lost, and they've had a similar problem of turning 1 point into 3 points. They've actually drawn more games than Fulham have drawn the most in the league. So I think I wouldn't be too worried. I'd be slightly concerned as a Brighton fan that they're not getting the results that they deserve. Obviously, they've, like you mentioned, they've battled with that XG stat all season, it feels like. So I think if they stick to their guns and keep playing the way they are, the results will come for them. I think it's more Newcastle fans that should be worried because their style of play doesn't suggest that they're going to get 3 points very soon.
I think it's worth mentioning as well the other teams which are sitting above Brighton. There's Burnley there as well, I think are on 28, and Southampton on 29. Now, before we press record on this, we were saying to Harry, we don't see them getting sucked in. Well, I certainly don't. And Harry, I know that the run that Saints have been on is a concern. What are your thoughts? Can you realistically see it happening? Like, is it a genuine fear of yours as a fan?
Do I think it's going to happen? No, just simply due to the fact that there's too many teams below us who, I've got to be honest, aren't as good. You know, the squad depth isn't as good, the manager's not as good, and they've frankly got less points. And at this point of the season, if you've got less points, it's a lot more concerning. But anything can happen. You know, Southampton, I think, winless in 8, picked up 1 point out of the last 24, haven't won since they beat Liverpool. And when we won that game, I would have thought, you know, Europe's a possibility, whereas now we're lucky if we get mid-table. We've got less points than we did this time after 25 games, which is ridiculous to think that our first 19 was close to a record-breaking amount. So momentum's a huge thing in football, and that's something Southampton don't have. And that's the main issue, is the fact of they might think they're safe, and that's when teams only come unstuck. You know, they're only 8 points clear. Teams can pull that back at the end of the season. That's when the smaller teams that feel like they can, you know, stay up, that's when a lot of the time they pick up their most points. So it's a concern, but do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't. I think Saints will be okay.
Devon, do you think the Southampton admin who posted the tweet on the night they beat Newcastle have stopped the count? Do you think he'll be looking back on that and wishing he didn't do it? I mean, to be fair, it was a good bit of fun on the night, wasn't it? But it's kind of escalated into a T-shirt and everything else, and since then it's kind of gone a bit sour.
Well, it's lucky Secret Santa provided, and someone's got one of them shirts.
Next time we win, I'll wear it on a podcast. You know, so
turn back into our last episode of the season, where I'm joking, but the run that Southampton are on is not good, and it seems like the seasons from if you come together with last season and this season, Southampton started off poorly and got better towards the end, and they started really well and just tailed off again. So maybe it's a bit of burnout due to, you know, not a lot of respite in there. But I think Southampton just need to hope that, you know, the likes of Ings will start firing again and pulling them out of this rut, because I think as soon as they get one win, they'll get a couple. It's just, you know, how these things are. Obviously, confidence is not going to be high after that defeat that I'll not mention. just so Harry's doesn't finish this episode crying. But I think the likes of Southampton and Burnley will they'll easily they'll stay up, I think.
Yeah, well, if you've watched the podcast before, you'll know that we like having a prediction. Before we give our predictions on who goes down, I will just mention I was the only person to have an Everton win at Anfield last week.
How's he got that in?
I'm going to take a mini victory with that.
There we go.
Wow.
No. So, yeah, we need to predict who goes down with Sheffield United and West Brom. I'm sure Devon's delighted that we're just kind of disregarding Sheffield United. They're gone. But yeah, if there's a viewer out there who can make a case for their survival hopes, then I'd love to hear it. But no, which team do you think will go down with Sheffield United and West Brom? Is it Fulham? Is it Newcastle? Is it one of the other teams? I'm going to go to Sam first.
I think it'll go down to the wire, or I'm hoping it'll go down to the wire, because you know what game is being played on the final day of the season. But I am actually going to go with the form team at the moment, Fulham. No, sorry. I'm going to say Newcastle going down. Fulham are going to leapfrog them at some point. Got mixed up there.
Yeah, and that game Sam refers to is Fulham against Newcastle at Craven Cottage on the final day. And we'll have more on that in just a moment, actually. Harry, what do you think?
I'm going to completely disregard what I said in the earlier part of the podcast. Even though Newcastle are on great form, I do think this run of difficult fixtures for Fulham might hurt them. And just a few points Newcastle have to pick up in that run. So I'm going to say Fulham are going to head down, but I wouldn't be surprised if they come straight back up.
And Devon?
I'm going to agree with Harry on this. I feel like Fulham's start to the season is going to cost them in the end. There's only so momentum eventually burns out, and if these next 3 games are heavy defeats, I mean they haven't conceded much anyway. But if they can't ride the next 3 after Palace, then I can see. I think it'll be Fulham, West Brom, and Sheffield United. But I don't think I should take too much joy out of that scene, considering where we are currently.
Yeah, got to be careful with that, I suppose. I'm going to side with Sam on this one. So it's 2 against 2. So there we go. We can't really decide. It shows how tight it is. But I really like what Scott Parker has done there. I think he's a really good guy. He comes across as one at least. And I almost think if it almost relies on if Bruce stays or goes. I think if Newcastle were to have a change and bring someone else in, I think that would almost be enough to give them a push. We've all seen in the past with new managers how it can often be a bit of a dead cat bounce. But I don't see him leaving. I don't think Mike Ashley is prepared to do that. So I think
if he did leave, who would you see to come in and try and impersonate?
Well, I think we've mentioned this before. Eddie Howe's maybe been linked. I know Rafa was on the list for the bookies as well, but I think Celtic have Neil Lennon has just left Celtic, so maybe Rafa will go there. I don't know, but that's the thing. I don't see him leaving, in which case I think I'm worried for Newcastle at this point, but we will see what happens. But I think they could very well go down.
I think it's too much for one man to do, and that one man being St. Maximin, who's a fantastic player. But as much as he is a fantastic player, he has lacked end product in some occasions. And without Callum Wilson, like we mentioned, they rely too much on him for when he's gone. I think they're just going to struggle too much.
It's a bit like when they were under Steve McLaren, they took too long to sack him. They brought in Rafa Benitez. They had the Townsend, who Townsend almost carries them to safety, but they just acted too late. And I think it's going to be the same. There's a chance that it'll be the same this time. Sorry.
So we've mentioned there the big clash on the final day of the season, which could prove to be very important between Fulham and Newcastle. But it's potentially got even more exciting in the past week with Boris Johnson's roadmap out of lockdown. It said that from mid-May, I can't remember the exact date, but there could be up to 10,000 fans or a quarter of a ground's capacity, whichever is smaller, inside football stadiums and sports venues in the UK. That means that the Premier League final day should have, in theory, fans in the stadiums. They're also expecting some pilot games to go ahead in April too. However, we should mention the Premier League are yet to confirm this. There was a tweet yesterday, that was Tuesday of this week, this is going out from Brian Swanson from Sky Sports News, and he said that the clubs are to be consulted on the sporting integrity. Would bringing fans back in question the sporting integrity, because you have to consider this game could be particularly significant, as we've already mentioned. And Sam, do you think it would be fair if Fulham were to be handed such an advantage for what could be quite an important match?
It's difficult to say, really, because we've been so desperate. We've been craving for this last year now to have fans back in the stadiums, and we could get it for the final day, like you say. But that game between Fulham and Newcastle could have a lot riding on it. So you could say that having 10,000 Fulham fans in the stadium that day will give them that sort of unfair boost with Newcastle not having the chance to play in front of their home fans. So it is hard to say, really. I'm not sure I have a solid answer on that because, like I said, we've all been so desperate to see fans back in stadiums. But at the end of the day, there could be big consequences riding on those games.
Harry, do you think there's an argument to say that having done almost the whole season behind closed doors, I know we had a few games in the tier 1 and 2 areas in December with a few fans, but on the whole, it's been behind closed doors. Do you think there's an argument to say that they should just finish the season and it's all behind closed doors and then start afresh next?
Oh, I think that there's certainly an argument there because Newcastle will be at a disadvantage when they play against Fulham if there's fans in the stadium. But for me personally, you've had 37 games up to that point to sort your season out. And at the end of the day, it is a home game for Fulham. They're not, all these games haven't been played at neutral venues. It's a home game. So it's the way the cookie crumbles. For me, I think Fulham fans should be allowed in there. And if you can get, 600 Newcastle fans or whatever the fair capacity is, because I don't know the quarter of the Fulham fans, then put 10% of that as away fans. So whatever that is, just have that as the allocation, whether, the right of movement at that time, if they can do that. If they can't, I still think it's a home game. And I still think that Fulham should have fans at the stadium for that game.
As you say there, it's hard to predict kind of what the travel restrictions will be at the time, whether the government are happy for fans to travel across the country to go to London for a game. But Devon, do you think Newcastle would be happy with that if that was the case? And secondly, do you think it is likely to be allowed?
Will Newcastle fans be happy with that? Definitely, if they were allowed to travel out of Newcastle, I think people would be desperate. The only reason to be in Newcastle is the nightlife, and you can't do that now, can you? So I can't see the restrict. I mean, if they were, even with non-league football, they weren't letting 100 fans travel from say Worksop to Loughborough. They were telling people that it should be on home fans only, but giving the clubs that decision. Apart from obviously when we're in tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, tier 27. I think it's going to be a decision which is going to be, do you go your head or with your heart? Because everyone wants to see the fans in. Sam and Harry have already said this, and can you imagine how good it'll be? But with how cautious the government are being, I'm surprised that they've said this towards this date, because I feel like they've been tiptoeing out of it, and they'll probably continue to do it. Given it the Premier League's decision, who knows? But I'm the personal one that I'd like to see them just let the season end with no fans. Obviously, the pilot games could swing it as well. You never know, because then it's if these have got so many fans here, then that's a disadvantage to them. So we need to just see how it pans out first. But if we do get to the end of the season and nothing's riding on the season and everything's settled, then they might sway that decision again. You never know.
Yeah, whether it is fair or not, it does potentially give an excuse to Newcastle. If there was relegation riding on that game and they did lose, then you know what's going to happen on the Newcastle side of things. They're going to be complaining about it probably. So whether you think it should be done or not, it does potentially give a road out for that team.
Well, yeah, we are looking a fair way into the future. It is, of course, 3 months away. And who knows, maybe by that point, relegation will be decided. But personally, I don't think that's going to be the case. I also think it's worth saying with Fulham, I can remember watching their draw with Liverpool at Craven Cottage. And I don't know whether it was because we've had a whole year of no fans, but having fans in that day seemed to me to make quite a big difference. They were really willing them on, and it's only going to be the same on the final day. So as we've already said, we don't know how this is going to go. We don't know how this roadmap is going to be. We hope that come June the 22nd, we're all in a pub somewhere watching England hammer Czech Republic. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Or a 0-0 draw with 27 right backs on the field.
and Declan Rice. No.
Whoa, we're not having this slander again, George. No Declan
Refuse.
Rice slander.
But yeah, it's really hard to predict. Hopefully, we will have fans back at some point, but with Boris and all the COVID stuff, who knows what is going to happen in the future. But there's just one to think about, and a potentially mouth-watering game at Craven Cottage on the final day. I don't know why I emphasised mouth-watering so much. I just wanted to be Martin Tyler, I think.
Nobody wants to be Martin Tyler.
Okay, we're going to move on now to our next item, and it's quite a big story in the Championship this week. A new manager, Dean Holden, of course, has left Bristol City. That was their experiment with the assistant head coach turned head coach. That kind of went wrong. They've been on a bad losing run, but in comes Nigel Pearson as their new manager. He's had a 6-month break from football. Of course, most recently with Watford, and I think we all agreed on the podcast that he was quite harshly dismissed from there. They went down as a result. Could you say he would have kept them up? Who knows? But anyway, he's back in football with the Robins. He's got a deal until the end of the season. Devon, we've spoken quite a lot about Pearson off camera with you. We know his Wednesday connections, and I know you're a big fan of his. So how excited would you be right now if you were a Bristol City fan?
I'd be ecstatic. I mean, the position that they were in, obviously they've always kind of been on the periphery of the playoffs, but always fallen off, especially under Lee Johnson. Holden did hold the fort quite well until injuries to the likes of White, Feynman, O'Dowda, Williams, and obviously Alfie Mawson was recalled, which seemed to be the kind of final nail in his coffin. For Pearson, it's a name that everybody knows in English football. Everyone respects him. He brings discipline. He's kind of been one of those old managers that shifted with the times as well. He's got the highest PPG and win percentage of any Watford manager in the Premier League, or what is it, seven years in the recent Premier League time, and 28 managers. And I just feel like he'll give them a boost, but I just don't know if this Bristol City side has enough quality in there to get into the playoffs at the minute. Obviously, they are 7 points off, which is not massive, but there are teams above them that are in some decent form. Likewise, the likes of Reading and Bournemouth have started to slip out of that picture as well. Yeah.
Harry, we know that Nigel Pearson also had a brief spell in charge at Southampton. Maybe not the most memorable spell, but as Devon mentioned there, he's very established in the game. I think he's pretty well respected quite widely. So do you think under Pearson, Bristol City could have the edge either this year or in the coming years to make a push for the Premier League finally? Because of course it's a league that they've never played in.
I mean, why not? They're only 7 points behind 6th place this season. They've got 14 games to make up that difference. And thinking that the Championship is A, so unpredictable, but B, Reading and Bournemouth, I wouldn't say on a ridiculous slump, because Bournemouth did have 4 games unbeaten, but they had lost recently. I think there's a chance. There's definitely a chance that they can do it. I can't remember for the life of me, so I do apologise who it was last season. It might have been Swansea, who were sort of middling in the mid-table, and they just shot up because of form and, almost got promoted as a result. So there's no reason why they can't. I think there's a definite chance next season when Pearson has a transfer window or 2 transfer windows to make his own squad, to get rid of the players that he doesn't want and don't want to work with him, and bring in his style of players. Sort of Cardiff and Middlesbrough this season, those are 2 teams that were, Cardiff were quite close, but Middlesbrough sort of nowhere near last season. And they're really fighting for it because of the manager they've got in charge, because they've got the players that they want. So I can't see why Bristol City are no different. Every single season, there's 2 or 3 teams that are in the top 6 that you probably don't expect, or the top 8 that you don't expect. And there's no reason why Bristol City can't be one of those.
It's worth mentioning as well, Sam, I think that from the outside at least, Bristol City look like a club which definitely have the potential to be in the Premier League. I think I went to Ashton Gate around about 11 years ago now, and the ground was an absolute dump. And over the last 5 years, they've completely rebuilt it. Every time I see it on the TV, I think, wow, it looks very nice. They're established in the Championship. So surely this is a good fit for Pearson. He couldn't get that Premier League job, but he's kind of, the potential is there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. And he's already had an impact without even being in the dugout. Obviously, they got a really impressive victory last night away at Middlesbrough. And they've got players like, I'm not sure I'd say his last name, to be honest. So I'm going to call him Famara, the striker. Got a brilliant brace last night. So I think there is potential there. Obviously, they're on a run of 7 straight defeats under Holden, which is hard to turn around, but they've already done it without him being the manager of the team. So I think he's performed miracles before at Leicester and, well, Carlisle, his first managerial job, and almost did at Watford. He just wasn't given the chance to see it out. So, it's like Harry said, like Devon said, the Championship is very unpredictable and they could still do something this year. There's still time.
Yeah. So as we said, I think Pearson probably a very good appointment for Bristol City. So they have a right to feel excited about the future. So we'll leave that one there, I think, and move on to our final point of this week before we get on to Sam's quiz, of course. And it surrounds Fantasy Premier League, which is something which on the last few podcasts, but well, we haven't mentioned it in recent weeks, but when we started the series 2, it was a big focus of ours. We've of course got our own FPL league. And I think you'd have to say that the game itself has grown massively this year. I think through people being in lockdown, it's given them some sort of relief and something to back in the Premier League games along with their own teams. But there was a big story, well, not a big story, but an interesting story this week, which emerged out of Aston Villa, where there was supposedly a leak surrounding an injury to Jack Grealish, because somebody managed to find out that 3 Aston Villa players had transferred Grealish out of their fantasy teams. Villa have since banned all of their players from playing the game, which is free to play online. It's got over 8 million players worldwide. So I kind of want to discuss this. Devon, what are your thoughts on the situation? Do you think Dean Smith has maybe overreacted by banning all of his players, or has he got a right to be annoyed by it?
He probably has a right, because it just seems really minuscule anyway, and like just one of them observations that I don't think many people would get, and then it's just happened. I don't think it'd have had as much of a reaction if they'd beat Leicester, which I think until they lost James Maddison, Leicester looked in complete control. And we know the effect that Jack Grealish is on. I wish someone would have transferred me that information before the weekend so I could make adjustments. But I don't know. It's one of the. It should just be harmless fun at the end of the day. I mean, how many conversations do we all have every week about this? Maybe I don't know where I'm going with this, but they're like the kind of the betting rules as well. Maybe this applies there, but can you see really people having that much of an influence when they're playing actual football matches on whether fantasy football is going their way or not during a game?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to pinpoint, isn't it? I get your link to betting. I think so the game itself has a lot of attention, obviously, on social media. And we've also seen recently, I was speaking about this with Sam yesterday before while we were planning for this episode. We've seen players like Patrick Bamford, that's the player who stands out to me, who discusses Fantasy Premier League openly in interviews. He says how he captains himself and everything else. So, Sam, we've seen that take place. So should we be surprised that something like this has happened? Like, could it have been coming?
No, we shouldn't be surprised, purely because on Fantasy Football, the official website, you can't private your account. So anyone can go and look at the team that you've selected, and this is where the problems have arisen. these FPL insider Twitter accounts have been able to look at players' teams and see who they've dropped. I mean, it happened with Liam Cooper and Alioski as well. Alioski had started 17 straight games. Cooper took him out of his team before the Wolves game, I think. And obviously, accounts saw that and notified everyone. So I think the players should be allowed to play the game because they're just, even though they're players, they are fans of the game just like us as well, and they deserve to be a part of it. I think they should possibly introduce a feature where other people can't see their accounts, or only select people can see them, so this doesn't happen in the future. Because when it's involving big players like Jack Grealish, who's really important to how Villa play, and that's big information for Leicester to receive before a game, which potentially handed them an advantage. So I think, something should be done about it, really.
I do feel
Harry.
like they should be. Sorry, before.
No, go on, Dev. Go on.
I do feel like there should be a feature where you can't see someone's team until after the game week, just so that people, like especially in leagues, because how easy is it when we're on the Fourmation Invitational, and if you want to join the league, I'm sure Sam will put it below, but
It's always in there. It's always in the
there's
description.
Good man.
Well,
there's always an incentive to have a look and see, especially when people lead at the top. I'm not going to name any names because otherwise I'll be gloating for the rest of the day. But there's always an incline to click on the team and see who's working for him. So there should be just the game week kind of blackout.
Yeah, I think it's definitely hard to strike a balance, given, as we've said, the game has gotten so popular. Harry, just to round it off, can you see this kind of calming down over the next few weeks, or do you think it could prompt other clubs to ban their players too? How do you see it going?
Yeah, I think they'll either prompt them, or it's a really difficult one, because, to be honest, I thought the rule was that you could only see teams after the deadline. So I until that story popped up, I didn't even know that was a feature. Maybe it shows from my fantasy team that I don't know that much about the app. I mean, recently I've not done too badly. That's beside the point. Because even though there's a small chance that it could hand an advantage, a 1% advantage is better than a 0% advantage. And if big things are leaked like that, like they said, Jack Grealish not playing, would have been a definite advantage, and being able to prepare for Jack Grealish not playing is absolutely massive. So I can see that sort of thing happening. Or, are we going to see the other side of the mind games? If, say, Saints have got a team coming up, they'll go, right, all the players, take Ings out the team, because then they're not expecting to play, and then who will play, they'd have prepared for Che Adams and Alindaloo, whoever will play up front. So it's just a different sort of mind games that might come into it, which would be absolutely unreal if fantasy football is part of the Premier League mind games.
I quite like the idea of that, Harry. I hadn't thought that, but I think you've thought further than all of us have. So imagine if that did happen. Wow. No, I think...
Well, let's be right. In fantasy football is more important than Premier League football. Let's be honest. Right. Are you going to sacrifice Ings' hat-trick for tactical awareness? No.
I'd do anything for an Ings hat-trick. Absolutely.
Who knows? Maybe that will be something they look at. I think it's where... I should say, Harry, the way that they found out prior to kickoff was because the deadline for the weekend just gone was on the Friday night, and Villa's game was not until the Sunday. So it wasn't someone looking through. So it was literally just because the deadline was 2 days before. So people immediately checked. They thought, oh, here we go. He's not going to play, is he? And that immediately... So Villa couldn't really do a lot about it. And it wasn't... I don't believe it was down to people hacking or anything like that. It was simply just someone doing the spot checks, and who can blame them? Some people take fantasy very, very seriously, so who can blame them? What they'll do about it, I don't know. But we've had a couple of mentions there of our FPL league for the podcast, the Fourmation Invitational. Sam mentioned it. It's always in the description. The league code, if you haven't got it yet, is HYADL3. And you can obviously copy and paste that from the description. I think when we last mentioned it, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was out in front. I can tell you I'm definitely not out in front anymore. I've had an appalling last few weeks. Just to say,
you've been so consistent all season. You're finally having a little falter. So maybe.
Blip.
Yeah, to say I'm disappointed about it would be an understatement. But there is a big double game week on the way this weekend. So get involved with the league. It's maybe a bit late to start a team now. Not that there's anything stopping you from doing that. But if you've had a team for a long while and you want to be in the league, then add that code into your account and you'll be able to get the standings up. But there you go. There's our sort of main topics for this week. So as always, we will finish on Sam's quiz. It's round number 8. What have you got for us this week, Sam? Is it Nigel Pearson based? Is that what you had in mind?
You guessed correctly, George. It was probably. I mean, he's an interesting character, and we're all big fans of him, I think. So.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I just wish he was Wednesday.
Definitely had a chance to, but.
Well, no, he didn't. Basically, right, story time. Anyone, every time he's linked with a job, he's always pushed the rumours down because obviously his family live in Sheffield and he said that he didn't want to hamper that. So he never came. And we had that
he's got United fans in his family.
Tony Pulis in. And I'm not going to swear on the podcast, but he's a clown.
Good
Fraud.
Go on, Sam. Let's have question 1 when you're ready.
Sorry.
Let's do quiz. Number 1, how many years did Nigel Pearson spend at Leicester City over his 2 spells at the club?
Oh God.
Are we including months or is it just years?
I'm rounding up slightly because it's not
fair enough.
Exactly this amount of years.
Well, that's difficult, Sam.
Had 2 spells with the Foxes. How many years in total?
Okay, I'm gonna have to work this out. Yeah, I think I know it.
Is that too? Yeah, that's too little. I'm gonna say it's. Yeah, I've got an answer.
Wait.
I'm waiting.
Oh.
It's not a maths question. Well, I suppose it is. But it shouldn't take too
much.
No, I'm trying to work out, trying in my head.
It's not differentiation and integration.
I did Leicester with league.
Yeah, he was the manager when they won the league, Dev. That's right.
No.
Wink.
Good job with speak if you want, isn't there?
Okay, are you ready, Dev?
All right.
No, yeah.
I'm going to move on, Devon. How many games did Leicester win in April of the Great Escape season when Pearson was given Manager of the Month? And where did they finish that season? So how many games did they win in April, which is the month he was given Manager of the Month? And where did they finish?
Well, finishing that month or finishing the season?
Finish the season. 2 points, yeah.
Okay, that's difficult. I've been watching Premier League years, so I really should be knowing this easily. We're going to go with that. Yeah, we'll go with that. I'm ready to go when the other guys are with the next one.
Yeah, all right. Number 3, which club did Pearson manage in between his 2 spells at Leicester?
Thank you, Sam.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. I really don't know this.
Wait till it's wrong.
I should know this. Well,
yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that.
It's the most confident I've ever seen, Devon.
I'm really not confident at all on this. I wish I'd checked his Wikipedia when we were prepping for the.
Now I'm trying to second guess myself. I've gone from Ben Derber and Walkabout Wednesday confidence to.
That is how a lot of my questions. How a lot of my questions are sourced.
Go on, Sam. Number 4.
Wait, surely not. Surely these are the standard of questions on who wants to be a millionaire, Sam. Come on.
Number 4, which of these clubs did he manage the most games for? A, Southampton, B, Derby, C, Watford.
Wow. Right, how long was it Watford for? Oh, this is going to be a really close one. I just know it. Blimey, that's tough. Southampton, Derby, Watford. Ooh, did you say league games or is it all games?
All games.
Okay, let's just take a punt. I'm going to go.
I think this is one of the. I've definitely had it before, but I think this is going to be a 0 out of 5 or 0 out of 6 job for me today. I can't. I'm still struggling on the 3. I'm struggling with all of them, but
just take a punt, Harry. I have for the last couple. Really,
Okay.
I'm not confident on either.
Question number 5 is who am I? It's a player. So I was one of the many Man United Academy graduates signed by Pearson during his time at Leicester. I had as many loan moves as I did appearances for the Foxes, and I've amassed 21 caps for Wales. Who am I?
It's not him.
Yeah, I started writing Richie Delat as well. That's the one I thought.
Can you repeat
Unless
that
it's
again?
Welsh.
I was one of the many Man United Academy graduates signed by Pearson during his time at Leicester. I had as many loan moves as I did appearances for the Foxes, 4, and I've amassed 21 caps for Wales.
Wait, 4 appearances for Foxes?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not Andy King then. I clearly misinterpreted what you said first time.
Oh, 4
He's had as many loan moves during his time at Leicester. Needed.
I chucked a name down. It doesn't mean it's right. It just means
right.
it's there.
I've got
21 caps for Wales.
I feel like I'm going to kick myself, but I really haven't got any idea. 25 caps for Wales.
21.
21.
Not that makes much difference.
No, my answer's different.
I really think I should know this, but I really don't. It's a good question.
Well, should we do answers?
Yeah, let's just do answers. I don't think it's going to come to me. If it does, then I might have to write it down before you get to it, but I don't think it will.
Okay, question number 1. How many years did Nigel Pearson spend at Leicester over his 2 spells at the club, George?
I've got 5 years.
5. Devon, what you got?
I've got 8.
Harry.
I'm not in the centre, but I'm in the middle. 6 years. I put 6.
He's gone down the middle. He's gone right. It was 6.
Oh, come on.
I miscalculated because I was panicking because you'd already started the second question.
We end the quiz here? Thank you very much for watching.
This is Harry. He said he didn't think he was going to get any of them right.
He says that every week.
But I am boss of the league. So
one last week. Can he win again?
Go on, Sam.
Number 2. How many games did Leicester win in April when Pearson was given Manager of the Month in that Great Escape season, and where did they finish, Devon?
I'm going to say they won 4 and finished 16th.
Won 4, finished 16th. Harry, what you got?
Yeah, I went similar thinking. I went 4 because normally there's 4 games in a month, but I went 14th. But is that a bit high? I'm not sure.
14th.
4 and 14th.
I've got 5 wins and 15th place.
Ooh.
Harry's 100% so far. 4 wins.
What is it?
They finished 14th.
Come on, that's what we like to see.
Did you have to get both, or do you get a point for one?
It's a point for each.
Yeah.
What, and it was 4, was it?
4 wins.
14th.
I was certain 4 was too low. You know.
I think they won 4, lost 1. I think they lost to Chelsea or something.
I was going to say there's normally 6 games in April, so I thought 4's a good number.
I'm throwing away my lead. This is
100%.
Go on,
Number
Sam.
3, which club did Pearson manage in between his 2 spells at Leicester, Harry?
I did the same tactic last time, so I'm going to say this is most certainly wrong because I don't have any confidence. But last time it worked because I got it right. I went QPR because I had no idea.
Yeah.
Well, that's absolutely no idea, to be honest.
I really don't think. I think he went here later, but I've got Hull City.
Oh, Devon looks disappointed. What you got?
I've got Hove.
He was very confident, and he was right to be confident because it was
thank God for that.
I didn't think anyone else was going to get that.
George's
No.
Wasn't even in my thinking, to be honest. Very sad.
Damn it.
Because
again, he was linked with Wednesday.
Okay, number 4. Which of these clubs did he manage the most games for? A, Southampton, B, Derby, C, Watford. Devon, what you got?
Right, I think Southampton. I feel like he only managed them like very little, and it was between Derby and the other one. And I feel like he only managed Watford for 18 games and Derby like 24. So I've gone Derby.
Derby. George.
I've got Southampton.
Saints. Harry.
My head was truly in the sand for this one. Pearson was well before my time. I'm going to go. You see that? Derby. There we go. I went Derby.
Harry, I hope that was deliberate. The head in the sand.
Nice Pearson pun there, but you're not.
You are an ostrich.
No points are being awarded for this question though, because it was Watford.
Yeah,
fair play. That was my last one out of all of them. I got to be honest.
But whom he is their most
Derby and
successful Premier League manager?
Derby and Saints, he managed 14. I think it was like 22 for Watford.
I remember him having a very bad spell with Derby.
Yeah, it wasn't great. And finally, the who am I? I'm not going to go through each of the steps again. So I'm just going to get your answers. George, go on.
I've got nothing to offer. I'm sorry. I was thinking Andy King until you said that he'd only made 4 appearances, in which case it was never him. But
Harry, have you got an answer?
I went Matty James.
Matty James.
James.
I've also gone for Matthew James.
I think he made more than 4 appearances. Sure,
I would have thought.
Yeah, but he did have a lot of loan spells out.
He's still there, isn't he? Is he still there?
Yeah, he is still there.
I remember at the time they had a bulk of Man United players because Ben Marshall were included, and obviously Richard Delatte. They had Danny Drinkwater as well. But
go on, Sam. Put us out of our misery.
Yeah, it wasn't Matty James, unfortunately. It was Tom Lawrence.
It was. Oh no.
Now you say it, that does ring a bell because I think one of his loan spells out of there was Ipswich, isn't it?
George loves Ipswich. That's all
Never mind. Less of that, Harry. Come on now. No, that was very good, Sam. I'm disappointed. I only managed 1 point.
Not happy.
1 point.
So
Harry wins again.
Yeah, I think Harry definitely.
A Nigel Pearson expert.
Close the gap.
Close the gap.
Very good.
He's still bottom of the overall standings, but only marginally. Only 1 point behind Devon now.
Wow.
I'm going to finish last again. I'm going to finish last.
He's on 24. Dev's on 25. George on 28.
Oh, okay. Well,
heating up.
I thought it would have been worse than that, to be honest. But there we go. But with that is the end of this week's podcast. Thank you very much for watching. We mentioned the socials at the top of the show, at @the_Fourmation on Twitter, and now on TikTok too. We're on Facebook as well. So next week we will be back with a quarter of a century, episode number 25. Make sure you don't miss that. But thank you very much for watching this week. See you very soon.